tired of being asked to take notes. About me and oh, there it is right there. You guys ready? Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Everybody wants to come in. Joey, would you mind shutting the door before you walk forward? Thank you. Closer to the mic. That work better? Okay. All right, so now the door is closed, we'll go ahead and get started. I just realized that these are the wrong slides. That's pretty funny.
Network time protocol, working group.
Wow, when I uploaded them, I uploaded the wrong revision. That's pretty funny. Uno momento. So how many people have been sitting here for the last 10 minutes when this has been up and not noticed this? Thank you.
Is the content is correct, I think.
Oh.
Title slide that's wrong. I'm immediately interested. Advance to the next slide. Maybe it'll take care of itself.
That's you're right. It's actually just the content, the cover slide that's wrong. So
Just roll with it.
yeah, exactly. Well, I was afraid it was the wrong set of slides, but you're right. It's the right set of slides. I just did the cover slide. You know what I based it on anyway. All right, let's start over. Welcome to the Rechartered Jose Working Group. This is the so for those of you who are at the BOF in Philadelphia, it was a little bit of a long and winding road to get to this point. We had the BOF, we had a virtual BOF, we had some development discussions, and here we are. So with that, this is the Notewell, which you will have seen, which you will have seen all week. It has all of the rules and processes by which we abide. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask any of the chairs or to ask our area director. We have a pretty short, not a pretty short, but we have a pretty condensed, pretty focused agenda today. We have note takers lined up. Thank you, Justin and Christina. Anybody else can help contribute by adding to the notes page if you would. Also, if you are relatively new, please remember to scan the QR code and join the queue by that method so that we can support both our local and our remote participants. And I think that is all of the administration. Is there any agenda bashing? Okay. Nope. So with that, John's just going to take a moment to remind us of what is in our charter. Oh, no, these are not the...
That slide I was going to use was
Yeah, it's the, no, actually, just give me 2 minutes to upload the revised deck that John and I worked on and did not upload. You were sitting right there. Didn't we upload them? Huh? I don't know what we.
Okay, so if we actually had the correct slides, you would be seeing a lovely description of the first part was of our charter. Basically covers a bit of history about what Jose has done and what that work has led to, such from the signing and encryption and core documents, algorithms, etc., and has led to JSON web tokens and various other things which have been widely adopted through the industry. So moving forward, we've gone from a place where signing and encryption was sufficient to a more privacy-centered world. I'm doing a lousy job of this off the cuff with no slides, but what the hell, I could sing. So it could get worse. So now we have applications that want to preserve privacy. So we need to adopt methods where we can deploy zero knowledge proofs, and the existing Jose structures don't support all the inputs and outputs that we need for zero knowledge proofs. Well, I have it more or less memorized. So we have actually the work items I need. So in order to support the new work for zero knowledge proofs, otherwise AKA known as JWP, we will continue to not actually have the slides. So the work items that the working group has been chartered to work on. One is an informal document detailing the use cases and requirements for new specifications enabling JSON-based selective disclosure and zero knowledge proofs. So far, I have yet to see anyone contribute a document for the working group to start on that. We have some other documents that have been contributed. The working group is supposed to work on a standards track document specifying the representations of independently disclosed integrity protected sets of data and or proofs using JSON-based data structures, specifically to prevent the ability to correlate between the verifiers. Standard tracks document specifying the representations of JSON-based claims and or proofs enabling the selective disclosure of these claims and or proofs, and also aims to prevent the ability to correlate between different verifiers again. The fourth one is standards track document specifying how to use existing cryptographic algorithms. Some of those may yet to be specified from the CFRG, etc. But as they come about, being able to use those cryptographic algorithms and defining the identifiers for the new JWP structures. Also a standards track document specifying how to represent keys for those new algorithms. Okay, now my laptop's gone too, just because. The screen. Okay, so this may be familiar to you if you were in Philadelphia. where could somebody lean against the plug and like knock out the projectors too while we're at it?
It's right here.
Moving on, an informational document defining test vectors for the new specifications, and a standards track document defining CBOR-based representations corresponding to all of the above for JOSE and CWT specifications. So we can, that's the high level. We can combine any of those goals, one or more of those into a single document. We're not limited to having, okay.
Sorry about that, John.
Having exact, I'm used to it. It's okay. So we can combine them into coalesce any number of them into a single document. And the next slide. We're also chartered to work with the Verifiable Credentials Working Group at W3C, Privacy Pass, and with the JWT, the OAuth work group around JWT for JWT SD, selective disclosure. Is it SD JWT or JWT SD? Okay, selective disclosure JWT. I always get that one reversed. So we do have a number of liaisons. Any questions around our charter? I imagine that there will be other work items that will come our way, things that are perhaps algorithms that need identifiers and things that need to be defined. So there will be bits and pieces of other work that we can undertake. So I believe next up on the agenda is Mike.
Yeah, Mike. And while he's coming up here, if everybody could review the charter and look at suggesting the milestones and contributing documents, that would be helpful. It should be, but
It's going to point over your head.
That would be lovely.
Okay, close enough.
Hello, I am Mike Jones. I know many of you. I worked on most of the original JOSE documents, as well as the related JSON Web Token specification in the OAuth working group. And I'm here today to talk with you about the JSON Web Proofs specifications next. So first I'll review a little bit of the IETF history, which overlaps with what John just said. You can tell us if we're saying consistent things or not. Next. So we had a BOF in Philadelphia in July, during which we discussed a set of drafts called JSON Web Proofs. And in fact, the BOF was entitled JSON Web Proofs, or JWP. And in some sense, what we did there was establish an existence proof that you could do JSON-based container format and algorithms for zero-knowledge proofs. And a number of people in the room, Christina Yasuda, Tobias Looker, did supporting presentations about related algorithms work and related use cases. Jeremy Miller, who should be virtually in the room, also did a presentation on this work, which he's been the lead editor of. As part of the long and winding road, we then had a virtual interim in October, which was facilitated by Roman and others, during which it seemed that there was consensus to recharter the JOSE working group. The IESG talked about it twice, as they are wont to do. And we have a reanimated working group. So welcome all of you. Here we are today. Next. So next, I'll go over what the specifications are and what they do. In some sense, this is a review of material that has been discussed in the BOFs, but not all of you were there. And now we have a working group, which is great. What do? They propose a new container syntax that's JSON-based in the spirit of the original Jose's JSON Web Signature and JSON Web Encryption container formats. And the goal is to be able to support additional algorithms and cryptographic techniques for newer privacy-preserving applications, sometimes called anonymous credentials, zero-knowledge proofs, etc. As John said, the existing container formats don't contain sufficient inputs and outputs to be able to represent the inputs and outputs needed for some of these algorithms, which is why we've done this new work in the first place. Among other things, it has native support for multiple selectively disclosable and potentially disclosable with non-correlation payloads. Next. So what do these new algorithms do and what do they look like? You can selectively disclose a subset of the payloads to a verifier. You can potentially do multiple presentations of a container using uncorrelatable integrity values. You can prove predicates without disclosing the payload values. What do I mean by that? For instance, one of the classic examples of that is you might be able to have a provable age over 18 claim without disclosing, say, Vittorio's birthday, and proofs of knowledge. Next. So there's actually history that goes before the IETF history. Jeremy and DW started this work being interested in these new algorithms and the capabilities and wanting to bring them into the mainstream. And this was incubated in the Decentralized Identity Foundation's Applied Cryptography Working Group. It was explicitly the goal of the Advanced Cryptography Working Group to turn this over to the IETF once the specs got to be at a sufficient level of maturity. Why? Because the IETF has cryptography experts and has a history of producing cryptographic formats such as Jose and Jose that have been widely used. And indeed, that's what happened. So there were early 0.0 drafts. Jeremy's very kind in crediting me with the inputs to that. By mid-2022, a yearish ago, there was expressed interest in the charter of the Verifiable Credentials Working Group in the W3C in using the JSON Web Proofs work as one of the representations of cryptographic securing methods for verifiable credentials. And indeed, that was a self-reinforcing positive thing that Roman stood up, I'm putting words in your mouth, but saying, oh, well, if a fellow standards organization is interested in the IETF doing work to support their mission, that's a strong case that I can take to the IESG. And indeed, I believe he did. So thank you. So we had the BOFs, we reanimated, and thanks especially to Roman and the two chairs at the time, both of whom are present in front of the room, for getting us through the discussions and the procedural hurdles to get where we are now. Next. I should credit Jeremy for writing the bulk of these slides. He actually did diagrams, something that I'm so bad at. So thank you, Jeremy, remotely. To your diagrams, I added text, as I am wont to do, that of the three JWP family specifications, one is kind of analogous to JSON Web Signature. It is the representation of the cryptographic format, except in this case, it can represent multiple integrity protected payloads, not just one. There's an algorithms draft which I give credit to Jim Schad, who chaired the original Jose working group along with Karen. And originally the individual drafts had the algorithms all meshed in with the signature part. And he said, no, let's rev the algorithms separately, put them in their own draft. And indeed, we have registries and we have many more algorithms since then. But following in the spirit of what the original Jose did, we have separated the algorithms specification from the container specification. And finally, unlike the original Jose, we're chartered to also do a token format where, in fact, historically, the JSON Web Token format occurred in the OAuth working group, but with many of the same cast of players and similar goals. So that's the grand tour. Above the line, there's some examples of some of the algorithms that early versions of that are already written down. The stuff that's in green is more solid than the stuff that's in blue, and that's okay. We're beginning this work. Next. So let's talk about some of the design considerations that Jeremy and the rest of us who've worked on this had in our minds as we did the work. Next. So there's 3 interrelated privacy features. There's selective disclosure, there's unlinkability, and there's proof of knowledge. And we wanted to keep all of those in mind and enabling them while realizing that just like the original JSON Web algorithm spec had different algorithms, some of which had different characteristics. You know, AES GCM has different characteristics than CBC, et cetera. We were going to have a flexible enough format that we could represent BBS and other algorithms and ZK snarks and new things that are coming down the pipe. I readily admit I am not a cryptographer. I wasn't 10 years ago when I worked on the container format for signing and encryption. The good news is we do have real cryptographers working with us on this. Some of them at Microsoft Research, some of them in the CFRG. So at least I have people that I trust, and all of us do, that we can ask questions like, how stupid is this thing that we're doing and can we fix it? Next. So advanced cryptography is already kind of hard enough. So we're trying to apply the KISS principle, keeping things as simple as possible. And Jeremy wrote this, it's both a joke and true, that we've tried to keep in mind the original, what would Jose do, and try to do things as analogously as possible to the, I think, time-proven decisions that have resulted in the widespread adoption of JSON Web Signature, JSON Web Encryption, JSON Web Key, and the JSON Web Token. We both want to explore techniques that are adoptable today while keeping in mind that we want to enable the writing of drafts as some of these more advanced techniques come into popular use, that we're flexible enough to do that. It is a balancing act. I expect many of you will be involved in tipping the scales of that balance, and I look forward to great discussions. Next. So let's talk about how the JSON Web Proof specs are and are not like JSON Web Signature. Next. So here's an example. Those of you who code in earnest about token formats and signed stuff recognize that the JSON Web Signature has 3 parts concatenated by periods, all of which are base 64 URL encoded. A header, a payload, and a signature. Next. Indeed, the protected header in the compact serialization, the payload representation, and the signature. Next. Oh, what does a JSON web proof look like? It looks a lot the same. That is on purpose. We were lucky in the way the web designers divided the URL safe character set, those that you can present in a URL without escaping, that there was one character left, which is our friend tilde, which I believe is ASCII 125 decimal, back from my days in high school where I knew all the character codes. We use that to separate the different payload representations, because indeed there's multiple selectively disclosable payloads for most of these algorithms that you want to be able to have some of, but not all of, when you're presenting. Next. And so this is the overlay of what a JSON Web Proofs data structure contains. And again, unsurprisingly, a protected header, payloads, plural, separated by from the tilde character, and a proof. Now there's also in the specs a JSON serialization, just like there was a JSON serialization for JSON Web Signature and JSON Web Encryption. Understanding those is an exercise left to the reader, and I want you to all be readers. Next. So here is a presentation. The original examples had 3 payloads. This presentation chooses to disclose only one of them. It turns out the first one in order. And the tildes are still there to say, and this one is missing, and this one is missing. Mike Prorock nods from the back. Next. These are links to our specifications. These are not currently Jose Working Group specifications like we do in the IETF. They are individual specifications. In this case, draft Jeremy Miller-Jose, indicating intent to have them be adopted as working group specifications. The working group currently has no adopted specifications. Next. So what do we do? Next. I think the logical thing for us to do is adopt these 3 specifications as working group items to enable us to start this work as a working group. These are not done. Things will be changed. Things will be added. Things may be removed. That's the way we do it in the IETF, and that's a good thing. But I do view this as a viable starting point from which we can iteratively improve and evolve. Next. And so the question before us, as always, is what would Jose do? Thank you.
Hold on. Michael, you're in the queue.
Thank you for that presentation, and thank you especially to Jeremy for all the slide work there, because I
Here, here.
have seen your slides before, and those are not necessarily the same. No, I'm strongly in favor of this as a starting place. It's a really good set of building blocks to which can be leveraged many useful and good things, and I am happy to contribute work, not having worked on these drafts yet, but to contribute work, especially around security considerations and notes around that area. So,
and I should say, I'm remiss in not crediting the CFRG in the slides for taking up work on algorithms for BBS. That's part of the reason why we have some confidence that in these drafts, we can have a container format representation for a registered BBS algorithm, because real cryptographers are working on that. And indeed, Tobias Looker in the room is one of the people who helped get them there and is helping move that work forward. So thank you, Tobias, for that contribution as well.
Ori?
Ori Steele. So I participated in some of the incubation work at the Decentralized Identity Foundation. I'm strongly supportive of having a JSON and URL encoding safe representation for zero knowledge proofs. Love to continue to work on these as adopted drafts within the Jose working group, if that's possible. And I'm really excited about BBS and what it can do for privacy, while at the same time having the developer experience feel as familiar as it can to the large number of developers that have worked with Jose and have built secure systems on top of it. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Any discussion at all? Oh, wait, Tobias. There you are.
Sorry, it was taking a while to drive this app. Yeah, so just to add to that, strong supporter of this work, as Mike referenced, I'm working on one of the algorithms that I think stands a chance of being really well compatible with this representation format. So, and I think the drafts are a great starting place for this working group.
Go ahead.
Mike Burrock, I did have one other note. In addition to BBS, there is quite a bit of work in the lattice side on things that very closely resemble what we're used to with zero knowledge proofs, more from a curve-based approach or a pairing-based approach. It's still early, but these things are starting to look real and starting to hold up to scrutiny. In particular, I know there was a presentation today at another conference around a dilithium-based approach. I've also seen a Falcon-based approach published on. So it's area that would directly translate through to this. So it's not that there's just one selective disclosure or zero knowledge based approach that would come in here. There's multiple things that will build as they become ready.
Because wait, stay at the microphone. Because I'm not a cryptographer,
Yes.
I'll ask if you can give us the 30-second summary. Where is this work being done, and what are the motivations for the work?
Yeah, the motivations for the work are the same as behind the motivations for BBS and related. So BLS signatures and pairing curves that Tobias is working on, which is, it would be really nice to have a way to have one single signature set where we're not having to go through and sign each individual element the way we do with SDJWTs, right? Or with MDocs from the ISO side. And so a method of actually having a single signature that represents all the bodies that you can go in and verify, even if you have not received all the material. And so that's a key motivation there. And to do that without necessarily having to have anything other than a self-contained, signed package. Where the work has been done to date has been primarily starting at places like IBM Research, et cetera, and then spitting out into the academic publishing world. Very typical cryptography type path.
IBM
right?
Zurich, or?
Yes,
Yeah.
Zurich is the main stuff that I'm aware of. Michael Osborne would be a great one to engage with on some of this. We talk with him on a lot of the post-quantum stuff. In fact, I think he's an author not just on one of the post-quantum drafts at Jose that probably would have come here if this group existed, because our motivation was Jose first, Jose secondary there. But he's also working on the LAMP stuff in that area. So there are folks definitely engaged in this. And as it continue, as it refines right through the research process, I'm sure CFRG would be a natural next step for that stuff before it then moves into something like Jose.
Thank you for the background, Mike.
Brent?
Brent Zundell, just here to also throw support behind JWP and bringing in these 3 work items, volunteering to help write, if that would be useful. Or still, just one more comment to add to what Mike said. One of the reasons to consider zero knowledge proofs based on lattice problems is the hardness. The hardness problem is different than elliptic curve discrete log, and with post quantum, we're concerned about some of those well-established elliptic curve based hard problems, and so those lattice approaches that are being developed, having something familiar that's based on them, but that's familiar to the interfaces that we might build with what we're more familiar with, although pairing friendly curves are also fairly new. Yeah, it's that discrete log problem it's a problem.
We want to go ahead and do a poll to see if we want to adopt this document.
Well, we can, but don't we have to take it to the?
We will, but do we want to go ahead and do a poll here? Seems reasonable. Okay. So we don't have anybody else in the queue. So we were going to do a poll about adopting these documents as working group, and then we can. Your eyebrows are raised. Is this wrong or you're okay? We're.
He always looks like that.
Yeah.
That's worse. So we will need to take this to the list in any event, but it would be.
So we'll have to take this to the list to finalize the adoption, but it would be good to get a sense of the room to see if there are any objections.
Okay, so with that, we have started the poll. Does everybody see it on your end? Yeah. Okay, so vote in the poll. Oh, there we go. Hands are being raised. Excellent. So we have about 50 people in the room, or 50 people in the session, I should say.
Add 1 and mark me as being in favor rather than me walking back to my laptop right now.
Well, here, I'll tell you what, I'll raise my hand and see if that helps. There you go. On your behalf. Okay, I think we don't appear to have anybody that's opposed. So with that, we will take it to the list. Thank you. Somebody joined the queue and then popped back out. Okay, so maybe those were mistakes. Okay. Does anybody else have?
Use the client.
Oh. At least your error was not as bad as me uploading slides. No. Oh, he's in and out. All right. So with that, is there any more discussion on that topic? No. Thank you very much, Mike. We'll take it to the list. I need to stop the queue.
Thank you all.
We want to just officially record what we found and what that's just for consensus.
Yeah. So we found. Yes. So note takers, can you record that? I don't understand why the poll is.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, what we'll do is we'll just say unanimous. We don't, or there were none opposed, or there. Oh yeah. So does there? All right. Let's just do an old-fashioned hum. There we go. Everybody hum who's in favor of adopting these 3 documents. Excellent. Everybody who's opposed. Excellent. Now I can't figure out why this won't go away on my screen. It's not on this screen, but it's on that screen. So the next thing we have on the agenda is, I believe, Daniel. Are you here, Daniel? I believe this is a draft primarily for the lamps working group, but they were going to present here. Pardon?
Somehow we're back to the poll.
No, the poll is still there. I don't know why it's not going away.
If Daniel is not here, I have at least read the draft. It's submitted to LAMPS. It registers key purpose IDs for use when you use Jose with X509 certificates. It popped up in the Jose group because it has the name Jose somewhere in the draft name, but I don't think it's aimed for Jose working group. So I think the presentation was more for information and asking the Jose working group for input.
Okay, so with that, we are at the, we're going,
Milestones?
yeah, we were going to go back to that. No, not that button, wrong button.
We've broken the system. This would be a good time to run.
Right.
So Lorenzo is suggesting maybe press the dismiss.
But the,
Terminating.
but it's, I mean, you could come look at my screen and explain to me why. There's no dismiss. The third screen?
Full, exit full screen.
The AD comes for
We're getting need echo help here.
Do I have to reopen the voting?
So he's saying, in the case the show hands tool, they can remove it from there.
No.
So maybe reopen the modal.
That's what I just did, and then I just hit dismiss.
No,
and-
and
Yeah.
that's why they pay me the big bucks.
Let's put back the NTP.
Thank you for that, Michael. That helps a lot. Okay, so this was the any other business. We did add a single milestone today, which was the adoption of these drafts by July. We have not defined any additional milestones yet. We will want to do some of that work. Is there specific things you wanted to go address beyond that? Pardon? And you've approved the milestone. We do officially have a first milestone. And you're going to.
We do have a charter item. It's like, okay. Okay. We do have a charter item, as I pointed out, around a use case document. Do we want to develop said document, and should we have a milestone around that? We thought it was important enough to put in the charter. Justin's at the mic.
Yes.
And on the queue.
I was just waiting for the go ahead.
Go.
Hi, Justin Richer. Use case documents are sort of a strange beast in that they tend to be very helpful in making sure that a working group is going in the direction that everybody agrees that they're supposed to be going in. But in terms of actual deliverable artifacts, they often basically outlive their usefulness as time goes on. And I've seen groups put an exorbitant amount of effort into getting a use cases document over the line, only to basically run out all of the energy in the group to getting any actual work done. I'd hate to see that happen here. And so the approach that I have done in other groups is to have an informal, non-deliverable, non-milestone use cases document at the level of a wiki page that the group can basically dump potential use case information into, but not necessarily keep around as a deliverable. I don't know how like Roman would want to like tag and track that in this particular group. I know in other groups we've said it's on a wiki and then that's fine. That's the question.
That was why I raised it.
Right. And I'm saying that was a dumb idea.
Well, we appreciate that feedback. We got rough consensus to play it that way. So we could certainly revisit it.
So that we would never do such a thing, but it is a non-standards track document that we committed to as our milestone. I think it's the an informational document. So I guess the question to the area director is, can we develop an informational document on the wiki? No.
I mean, let's not. This is the thing, right? So. No, I mean, we said we're making an informational document. You can't put that on the wiki because it's not informational. Can the working group decide that they want to rejigger this and not deliver on that? Absolutely. But that's a consensus thing.
Right. So for the moment, do we have anyone who wants to start working on said document? If we don't have any prospective authors, then that would indicate a delay.
One option is to work on an informal document and then never publish it, just park it. That was, for example, what the Lake Working Group did a couple of years ago.
So what Carsten, what often happens in practice is that the actual specification has an introduction. And that is likely to mention some use cases and some requirements. And there goes your milestone. I mean, you are not going to have a specification without any information about requirements, are you? It's going to happen.
I think the answer at this point is we're just starting out. So I think we basically ask them, send to the mailing list asking for a contribution around this topic and see what we get and where we end up with. I don't think we need to decide today what the future of this particular goal is. Okay. Anything else on milestones, John?
I think that's it for the moment. Test vectors probably follow on after some specification.
Yeah.
And I guess the COSI document can also wait or be included in the other.
Justin, did I just not take you out of the queue?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Michael?
Yes, Michael Perrock. Question on the milestones before we leave them. And this actually has overlap with the COSE side. So for instance, with the post-quantum signature drafts that are now 3, we would have taken that to Jose first, had Jose existed at the time, and obviously we're defining both. We have a similar opportunity now to take a draft for ASCON to one or the other. Could go either way. Is there a preference between taking drafts in here and defining, the COSE side alongside it, or, if we're defining JSON first, or, what's the preference here?
Yeah. I don't think it's in the charter to do these things, but that the AD maybe can.
Well, the last point says building upon COSE and CWT specifications and defining seaboard-based representations corresponding to the above. That's why I'm asking.
So we're defining the container format for these new algorithms. I'm not sure what about these new algorithms as they're approved by, as they're approved would change JWP and what, so what would we be defining differently as a result of these new algorithms is I guess the question. We're not defining those algorithms here.
Right. We're defining the representations of how we store the keys and things like that. And so the question is if you've got something that could either go here and define both, you know, Jose and COSE, or should we just split, right? Should we have one draft for each?
We should have a container format that can support all of these new algorithms and make sure that what we're developing is inclusive of the various algorithms as they're applied. So I'm not sure that it's really a case of coming here or there. We should make sure that the algorithms as they're approved can be supported by what we develop. So I guess the answer is here.
Okay.
I understood the question as being about post-quantum signature and ASCON, not about being selective and zero knowledge proofs. That's what I said. It was not in charter, but maybe I misunderstood the question.
I missed, so we may have.
Yeah, sorry. So to clarify, there are things coming out that are not necessarily zero knowledge proof that could benefit from having Jose representations, et cetera. So that's the question. For things like that, do we take that to COSE? Do we take that here? Or are we limiting this to just things that are zero knowledge proof, selected disclosure only, et cetera?
So let me try to re-ask that question in a simplified way. Are you asking if there's Jose maintenance to do that's not zero knowledge proof kind of specific? Where do we do that work? I think we do it here.
I think that was my.
Go ahead, Mike.
I'm going back to the test vector deliverable. I will say that Jeremy has been good about whenever we put something in the algorithms draft that there is a machine-generated testable representation of the use of the algorithm such that it could be verified by independent implementations. That's kind of where I started out with John and others when we were doing JSON web signature and encryption, that we wrote real examples with real code. And then eventually Matt Miller showed up out of the kindness of his heart and wrote RFC 7520, which was a representation of uses of every algorithm we defined. And I eventually want us to do that. But the good news is we are generating all the examples in the thing with code already.
Go ahead, Carson.
Yeah, I think Mike said it, but I'm going to say it again. You want test vectors in the sense of examples that go into the defining document. Plus, you want to have a more extensive set of test vectors so people can test out the corners of the implementation that don't necessarily need to be touched in the exposition that the defining document needs. And you can do these two things at different times. And you can leave some of the test vectors in the GitHub repo. You don't really have to publish them as an RFC if you don't want to.
Go ahead, Justin.
Justin Richer, one of the most useful tools that is in sort of the Jose community is not a Jose document. It did not come out of the IETF. It's jot.io. And I can't tell you how many times that I've used that tool, and in order to test things, in order to test encodings and test content and all of this other stuff. And I want to encourage this group to, Carson, I think was kind of getting at this, maybe think outside of the sort of the core specification for the kinds of things that'll be useful to a wider community. And because, RFCs are not the best container for everything. One of the things, for example, we've done with HTTP web signatures is we've got httpsig.org, where you can go in and plug in your own messages and test the little Python signer that runs it and get test vectors in and out as much as you want all day long. We didn't include all of that in the RFC. We didn't include all of those same things as direct examples in the RFC because that would make it many, 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 many more pages long with very diminishing benefits. So for this kind of stuff, yeah, absolutely get as comprehensive a core set as makes sense. But perhaps, look to wider artifacts for capturing more things.
Okay. So that brings us back to any other business. I think we've talked a fair bit about milestones. You can look to the mailing list for a call for contributions against any of these milestones. We'll do the call for adoption, and so part of that means we want to start getting feedback on the documents that we have. The next thing I put down here virtual interims, but what I really meant was like way of working. So one of the things we've talked a little bit about was this use cases document. There is the IETF wiki. Do we want to make more use of that for documenting these kinds of things? The other question is the documents. Mike, are we planning to use GitHub? What way of working would you for Jeremy here?
The documents are already in GitHub repository named JSON Web Proofs. It started that way when it was at the Decentralized Identity Foundation. They were named in a generic way such that we could transfer or continue working in that GitHub repository in the IETF should the IETF choose to adopt the documents. So I believe it would be at least my co-editor's preference to keep using the GitHub repository we already have. And I believe there's links to it in the front matter of all 3 documents.
Yeah, I think what we might want to do is add a link to it under additional resources or something like that on the working group page, as opposed
Great.
to just so that we if we don't have a IETF Jose GitHub, if we're going to be using a separate, I can understand not wanting to move them, not wanting to rename them, but we do need to point to them in as many places as possible.
Yes.
Councilwoman, there was a whole working group that discussed how to do this. If you have a good reason to deviate from that, deviate from that. But there was some thinking going on there. And I would recommend doing what that working group proposed because it has worked well in practice. And repositories can be transferred between organizations.
Okay.
So the first thing is to get a GitHub organization and then see which repositories do you want to have there.
This is Justin. Yeah, seconding what Karsten said. Moving Git repos is really, really, really easy. Like using that as an excuse to not do things the right way is ridiculous. The main thing that you get is ownership and control by the chairs. When you move it over to an actual IETF managed organization repo. And that can be really helpful when editors cycle out, which does happen over time, or documents cycle in and out, or any other kinds of things that may happen in terms of management of something over time. I've done many documents in personal repos, I've done many documents in company repos, and I've done documents here. It's better to do with IETF tools.
Yeah, but one data point, when you move a repository in GitHub, it remains accessible under the old name. So there is no, you don't lose links.
I personally agree. We also seems like we will have maintenance document that are not really related to JSON web proof. So otherwise we will need another GitHub anyways.
Yeah, I personally don't much care either way. I just want a decision, or I want to know what we're going to do. And I knew that they weren't currently in a Jose repository.
Right. I believe there's not currently a Jose repository. Justin, I don't think there's anybody making excuses. It's just, we have something that's working. We're perfectly willing, I believe, to work with the chairs to move it under whatever the then current IETF processes are. I'm not up to date on that, but maybe.
Yeah, I mean, the last
we
time
can talk with people who are, and that's fine.
Right. There's been a lot of evolution of these tools, and I haven't looked at them quite recently to see exactly what they're doing. I know they're better than they were. But anyway, so I'm sensing a desire to move it under the IETF repository. I'm perfectly happy with that. We'll work, somebody, not me, huh? Right. Whatever. We're doing something. The last question I had was pace of work. Some communities work better, they chug right along and they get things done. And, with 3 times a year IETF regular meetings, otherwise a mailing list and other things. Other groups work better with virtual interims to keep the work moving. What we really don't want to do, and what I've seen a number of times over the years, is just losing momentum. And it's just we need to keep some sort of a pace so that we get this done in the time frame in which people that want to deploy it actually care about it. So I don't know, Mike, since I don't know if Jeremy is, well, I guess he's not on the queue. So I don't want to impose any deadlines or anything. I don't want to do virtual interims if nobody wants them, but we're willing to do them if we think it'll be useful. And this is our first meeting, so I'm trying to get some sense of what people want to do to keep stuff moving forward.
David waits on the queue.
Yeah, David?
Muted or not? Am I still muted?
Oh, there you go. You're there.
Excellent. So I wanted to say that I've done the administrative work on the current GitHub repo. So once there is a decision, I'd be happy volunteering to make any changes desired. I also wanted to say that in advance of the Jose working group getting reanimated, I went ahead and reserved the Jose-WG organization on GitHub. And so I'd be fine turning that over to the chairs.
Okay, thank you. So back to the topic of virtual interims is I'm not seeing a strong push to do them, so I'm happy not to. Is there anybody here who wants to suggest that we do? Jeremy?
All right, you guys can hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Excellent. I would like to see how we do on the mailing list and through GitHub. And if we're not really, moving fast enough by the next IETF meeting, we should definitely start scheduling virtual interims at that point. But I think I do hope that we can make a lot of progress between now and then, just through the mailing list and GitHub.
Okay, great. So with that, we're at the end of the agenda. Is there any other business? So with that, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your patience with our occasional technical glitches. And see you around the IETF. Oh, wait, it's probably going the opposite direction. Oh. So,
How come no one asks
You might
what
not get
Jose
the
would do?
reference,
You know,
but
it's like.
because there's no twist.
I know.
So I wore, when we chartered Cozy, which I still absolutely refuse to pronounce Cozy. When we chartered Cozy, it's Cozy, that's how Kathleen said it. I wore my What Would Jose Do shirt to the meeting.
I'm really sorry for the slides.
You didn't do it, but
Yeah, that's sort of my point. Like I almost threw a landmine in. It's like, where's the unprotected header stuff, you know?
So, I mean, I find slides distracting.
Well, see, I'm very
My
first.
similar to how